every man truly dies.
Words can light fires in the minds of men. Words can wring tears from the hardest hearts. But words are a pale shadow of forgotten names. As names have power, words have power. Words can light fires in the minds of men. Words can wring tears from the hardest hearts. There are 7 words that will make a person love you. There are 10 words that will break a strong man's will. But a word is nothing but a painting of fire. A name is the fire itself. In other words, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fluffenhammer.
I could have fallen asleep to that. That was quite sweet. You almost had it almost had the feeling of, do you remember Jim Henson's Storyteller?
Oh, yes.
It kind of had the feeling of that about it. I could, it had a sort of John Hurt quality.
There is the best thing about Jim Henson's Storyteller is hearing the amazing moment of John Hurt saying the word trollop many times.
Trollop many, many times, and he relishes it, doesn't he?
He really does. He loves the fact he's getting away.
He's run off with a trollop.
He loves the fact he's getting away with a naughty word on children's TV.
Yeah, he does. He loves it. Absolutely loves it. For those who don't know what we're talking about, the Storyteller was a Jim Henson project back in the 1980s, late 1980s.
Yes, yeah.
A fantastic show. It's just adaptations of the first season is Grimm's fairy tales and the second is the Greek myths.
Yes.
And they are stunning.
They really
beautifully told. I mean, if there are DVDs out there, I would highly recommend them. It's a stunning show.
I think the entire thing's on YouTube as well at some point.
It probably is, because it's not very long.
No, it's not.
It's not very long at all.
As we keep getting told off for doing this, I'm going to actually say it right now. No digressions, apart from the one we've just had. Hi everybody, I'm Griffey, I'm Adam.
Are we getting told off for this?
Well, not as much told off, but the last episode we got to 8 minutes before we actually introduced ourselves.
Oh, right, well, okay, fine. Fine.
And apparently,
I don't mind that.
No, I don't mind it
myself.
Either. This is what we do, we conversate, we throw words back and forth at each other, and it's...
Absolutely.
And it is a wonderful experience.
It's the natural cut and thrust of witty conversation is what it is.
It is, but apparently you can have a drinking game on how long it takes us to get round to introducing ourselves. And
Fair
you
enough.
can tell that we've done it again because I've digressed once more. And hello, George.
Hello. Hi. Hello out there, by the way. Hello, Adam. Yes, I didn't even realise that I hadn't said hello there.
You see, look, my friendly listeners, look, this is what it's like. We've now completely derailed ourselves. It doesn't feel right anymore. And in fact, I'm just going to take my ball and go home.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I will retire, and this will be the end, the last episode of the Fluffenhammer.
apart from the next 200, you know.
Yeah, of course. It was far too young, obviously. But anywho, what are we up to this time round then?
Well, we've got a couple of things for this week, I think. You've got yourself some really interesting stuff that you want to talk about.
I do. I've got a couple of things actually. I mean, it's one of those things where there's too much. There's too much Games Workshop. Stop it now. We're overstuffed. We're glutted. We need to crawl our way to the vomitorium and get up all of this stuff. There never was a vomitorium, by the way, not in the way it was popularly understood, but that's also a digression. It's a myth. It's a total myth. There was never a place where Romans would feast and then vomit up and go and feast again. It's a total myth. But I wish it were true.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the kind of thing I wish were true.
I think it's one of those things that you can put into works of fiction because it feels too good to completely forget about.
Absolutely. It feels good. It's a good image. Mm-hmm. As gross as it is, it's a great image. Anywho, yeah, I mean, what Games Workshop, they're really, in 40k terms, they're really capitalising. You know how they promised last year that this year was going to be the year of the Xenos?
Mm-hmm.
people were a little bit skeptical about that earlier in the year, which is fair enough, because there were a lot of Imperial and Chaos releases.
Yes, just getting that stuff out the way. Yeah.
Yeah, like the Custodes and the Thousand Suns and all of that stuff. But that was like the tail end of 2017, really. They were just getting it out. This year, they seem to be going full tilt with the Xenos, and boy, they really are. They're putting a lot of attention on these guys. We've recently had the Necron Codex, which I've got in my hands here, and I don't know whether it's just me, whether it's because I've gotten used to the previous codices because I've read them so much, but this one, the production feels a little better on this one somehow.
Okay.
It feels really good to have in hand. It's got really gorgeous like paper, and it feels good. It's weighty, and its layout, its editing, and the artwork is fabulous in this book. It really is. They've put a lot of attention into the Necrons, and you know what? Their army list isn't that much changed from the Index. Really,
no.
There aren't enormous changes because they're one of the ones that didn't really need enormous changes, to be honest. Their Index can hold its own.
Oh,
it can still hold its own because they're just a very, very elite army.
Yeah, no,
they've always been an elite army.
The robotic minions walking in lockstep, isn't it? That's all that
exactly
the Necrons ever need to be. A couple of flying things flapping about, but the majority of it is just this unstoppable, shining horde coming towards you.
Exactly that. I mean, all they've really done with the Necron Codex, a few tweaks here and there to make certain units work better, but by and large, all they've done is just use the index list and then introduce things like stratagems and warlord traits. And the thing that really excites me about the book is that the Necrons haven't really been that developed in terms of like the sub-army lists. Mm-hmm. You know how you've always had like the Chaos Legions, the Space Marine chapters, the Elder Craft Worlds, and blah, 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 blah. The Necrons have had the dynasties, but they've never really been that developed in game terms. They've just been colour schemes and histories, really.
Yeah.
They've existed in the abstract. But now they don't. Now you can actually take Necron armies of particular dynasties that have particular dynasty traits, I suppose. I'm sure they don't call them traits. I can't quite... they are protocols. They have protocols instead of traits. So you can now take Elder armies of, for example... Necron armies of the Mefrit dynasty, for example.
Right.
Or of the Nefrek dynasty. Obviously the big one, the equivalent of the Black Legion or the Ultramarines or Ulthwé, which is the Sautek dynasty. And they all play differently. They all have slightly different command protocols, which makes them play slightly differently, which is really, really cool, because one thing the Necrons were perhaps arguably missing is a little bit of individuality.
That's true, yes. They are, as I said before, they are the shining horde. There isn't a huge amount in there apart from some of the characters. I'm trying to remember the name of him. Trazyn. Trazyn, that's the one.
Trazyn the Infinite. And Imhotep the Storm Lord. And there's a couple of other ones, actually. They're not new. They're from the last codex. You've got... my favourite, my absolute favourite. I can't remember his name. Let me see if I can find him. He's the Necron Warlord whose protocols have been so damaged over time that he actually thinks he's still fighting the ancient wars of the Necrontire.
Okay.
He doesn't perceive like orcs and Eldar and Space Marines. He actually sees living Necrons. He thinks that he's still fighting the civil wars of the Necrontire, and he finds it weird. Like, there's a little bit in the Codex where he talks about how he finds it a little weird that his enemies are daubing themselves in green. He finds that a little odd.
As well you would, really, wouldn't you?
Nemesaur Zandrek, and he's got a bodyguard called Vargard Oberon, and Vargard Oberon isn't damaged.
Name is amazing.
It's great, isn't it? He isn't damaged, so he sees reality as it is, and he's kind of like long-suffering, he's long put upon. He protects his master from his own madness, basically. And he apologizes to the lesser warlords who are like, this guy's mental. And he's going to lead us into absolute destruction if we don't stop him. The thing is, Vargard Oberon is so good at protecting his master that all the assassination attempts fail. He's like Waylon Smithers to Mr. Burns.
See, that alone brings up an interesting thought. The Necrons try to assassinate each other?
Oh yeah. Oh, in this, the one of the things they have done, which I really like with the lore, and it started to come about the last codex, is that they've made a point that there's not just one united Necron race. Mm-hmm. There are all of these different dynasties that are scattered throughout the universe, and they're all awakening with slightly different damage done to their protocols. Mm-hmm. So some of them, they exhibit different characteristics and different traits. Some of them have woken up and are completely insane. Mm-hmm. They believe that they're like ancient star gods or something, that made of sunlight. Some of them think that that they're like the remnants of a dead race, that they are actually undead creatures that have come back from the past to prey upon the mortal universe. They're all mad. They're all absolutely mad, and that gives them very particular characteristics and often brings them into conflict with one another. One of the things they have done with the Necrons, as they've done with all of the races they've produced new codices for, is shunted them forward into the present day. So what you're getting is this sudden eruption across the universe, and most tellingly within the Imperium. You're getting these spontaneous awakenings of buried Necron civilizations who are often waking up on planets that have been colonized by the Imperium and are finding their homeworlds overrun with these vermin, and they're not happy about it. They're not happy about it at all. They're not quite as racial supremacist as, say, the Eldari are.
No.
There are countless instances throughout the book, actually, of Necrons talking, actually debating with members of the Imperium.
Right.
They're not unreasonable. The Necrons are not an unreasonable race at all, unless you encounter one of the dynasties that's absolutely fucking mental. then they're obviously very unreasonable. But by and large, even in their sort of Terminator forms, as it were, they're not unreasonable. You can talk with them. You can debate with them. They genuinely believe, just like the Eldari, that they are the inheritors of the universe, that all of the races that have sort of cropped up in the interim are vermin, essentially. But they are not without reason. They can be debated with, and they can even be reasoned with. I mean, there are instances where it even seems that they come... Well,
was that on purpose?
What?
You said about them being in Terminator forms, and then you said they can be debated with, they can be reasoned with.
No, that wasn't... I did not mean that, no. That was totally unconscious. Sorry. That came out of nowhere. Sorry about that. Totally unconscious, ladies and gentlemen. I did not intend that at all. That was a totally Freudian slip. But no, there are instances where they even help members of the Imperium when it's in their interests. You know, when it doesn't undermine their intentions. And there is even this suggestion that, you know, they don't want galactic dominion, per se. They could coexist with the other races, as they did once. You know, when they were the Necrontire, they did coexist with the other races for a brief period. And that's fascinating. I find that really interesting. They are amongst the more reasonable of the armies and the races in 40k. I'd say they inch out the Imperium quite significantly in that.
That is a weird thought.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Because we've discussed on the Facebook group multiple times, Yeah.
Yes, who is the most reasonable character in 40k? Traz in the Infinite is the most reasonable character in 40k. I've said it before, I'll say it again. He's right up there every single time. Traz in the Infinite is the most reasonable guy in the 40k universe, and the reason he's the most reasonable is because he's kind of apart from it. He's even apart from his own race. He doesn't give a shit what the other Necrons do. In fact, he kind of regards them in the same way he regards all the other races. They're things to be collected.
Yeah.
And put on display. And you know why it is? He's called the Infinite for a reason. He exists outside of time. So he's actually seen the end and the beginning of the 40k universe. He has seen the way everything plays out, and he doesn't really care very much. He hops up and down the timelines and the various possibilities, and he just surgically excises bits that he finds interesting, and he puts them in his museum for his own purposes. He's a collector. He's kind of, I mean, you could take him as being a kind of loving parody on the fans of 40k itself.
Oh, I so hope that was where they were thinking.
I kind of get that feeling, because he doesn't really care about much else.
No.
He's not that interested in the the wars, and the only thing he's concerned about is that there may come a point when, say, chaos spills over into the material universe and it removes the possibility of collecting samples of particular races. That's the only thing he's bothered about. And I find him really reasonable. There are myriad instances throughout the fiction of him actually talking to characters from other races, and he always comes off as the most reasonable.
I know that.
Always.
I know there was a fair bit of short fiction that came out during the fall of Cadia that had a lot of Trazen talking to people and doing stuff.
Yeah, well, he was involved. You know, he was involved in the fall of Cadia. He tried to help it. He tried to stop it. He released Inquisitor Greyfax from his collection.
Yes.
And, she's not very happy with him, but there is a sequence where they're talking together, where they meet on Cadia before it destroys itself. And she is all for killing him. You know, she's all for attacking him, and she can't do anything to him because he's, basically immortal.
Yeah.
And he's kind of weary, and he's like, look, I know we've got this beef, all right? Put it aside, and let's work towards a common goal. All right, let's do the reasonable thing here. He comes off as the most reasonable. In fiction like Fabius Bile's books, he talks to Bile quite a lot. And, for me, second, a near and very close second of the most reasonable people in the 40k universe, Fabius Bile would be number 2.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it, isn't it? You've got this ancient alien who has lived countless millennia, and he is incredibly reasonable. And then Fabius Bile, who goes around and sticks things on other people for shits and giggles.
Yeah, but the thing is...
But his mindset is a reasonable one.
Bile is not insane.
No.
He's not like the other Chaos characters. He's not even technically a Chaos character, because he doesn't like the gods. He hates the gods in the same way that Araman does. Yeah. He actually, if you read the Fabius Bile books, his intention, and it's really interesting, is he wants to remove what are now the Chaos Legions from the legacies of their forefathers. He hates the Primarchs. Fucking hates them, including his own. Hates Fulgrim. Absolutely fucking hates him. He thinks that the Primarchs are the sources of all of their problems. It's like the sins of the fathers, they've passed down all of their flaws. So what he's trying to do is create a species of mankind that is separate from the sins and the weaknesses of its forefathers. He believes that's the only way mankind is going to survive. And he is zealous in that pursuit, but he's not unreasonable. He's right. He's actually right.
Yeah.
And you know what? He is conditioning these new men, as he calls them. He's conditioning them to be proof against chaos. He's making them so that they have no echo in the war. So that if they do come to supersede humanity, the chaos dies. Chaos just dies. The warp becomes still.
And it's crazy to think that there is a character who is, for all intents and purposes, owned by chaos, who is working on a way to stop chaos.
And
he's probably doing more for that than the Inquisitors ever will.
But this is the thing about Fabius. He hates the gods, and he acts against them, right?
Yes.
But he's like Ahriman. The gods love him. The gods love him, whether he believes himself to be acting against them or not.
Is that because he's so self-assured and so full of self-belief that he accidentally empowers the gods?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Ahriman. Ahriman's exactly the same. The only difference is Ahriman pursues his goals through sorcery, whereas Fabius does it on a more secular level.
Yeah.
It's about eugenicism and genetics, and it's really fascinating. It's actually really fascinating getting an insight into him. If you read the Fabius Bile books, he is reasonable. He is not an unreasonable guy at all. He is the most reasonable of the Chaos characters, barring perhaps Ahriman. But yeah, Trazyn, I think, supersedes him. I think Trazyn supersedes him, but just because he's got a greater scope than Fabius does. Fabius cannot see all events and all possibilities, whereas Trazyn can, unfortunately.
Trazyn can, and Trazyn has already seen more things take place, and he can already watch the pattern of reality more times than someone like Fabius. Even someone as long-lived and as... I don't want to say the word immortal, but... someone with the longevity of Fabius Bile. He would be able to see the world from a perspective that no mere mortal could think of. Yet
absolutely.
That is absolutely nothing to the perspective that Trazyn can look at the
Exactly
universe
that. Trazyn... Yeah, absolutely. Trazyn is older than the Emperor. He's one of the oldest creatures in the 40k universe, you know? So his scope alone allows him a degree of distance. It allows him a degree of perspective that no other creature has. The fact that he's atemporal, that he can hop up and down timelines, makes him even more reasonable, insofar as I can see.
Yeah.
There's another character very like him, Orican the Diviner, who is... he also is atemporal. He's like a soothsayer, and he can sort of not only perceive timelines, but he meddles in them. He alters them, but he's very sparing about it because he can perceive like the ripples of any action and reaction. He's not like Tzeentch has this quality as well. Tzeentch perceives all potentials and possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And Tzeentch meddles with them willy-nilly. Tzeentch does not give two shits about the consequences. He finds it hilarious when there are like multiple ripples that contradict one another, splashing into one another and causing temporal storms and contradictions and paradoxes. He loves that. Whereas Orican the Diviner is more like a surgeon. He very carefully measures what's going on, what's happening, and what could potentially occur if he touches this vein, this potential, this skein of reality. So he's like very, very distant, but potentially awesomely powerful. Potentially godlike. The only thing that keeps Orican the Diviner from basically rewriting the 40k universe so it becomes a Necron utopia is the fact that he's so cautious.
Because the smallest thing that he could do to try and create the all-seeing Necron Empire might actually be the same thing that destroys it.
Exactly. Or that undoes the universe totally.
Yeah.
Like all of reality. He's a fabulous character, actually, because he's one of those characters that unseats the nature of the 40k universe. The fact that there is a character as powerful as him floating around, who can basically... he sees reality almost like a pool of ripples spreading out from every potential situation. The fact that he can reach down and touch those ripples and break them, or set off a new series or pattern of ripples, makes him ridiculously powerful.
How does that translate to the tabletop?
Well, in the tabletop, it's actually not that bad. What you can do with Orican, he's got two profiles, basically. And if the stars are right, you have to roll randomly, and if the stars are right, then you can get Orican the Ascended, who is like basically like a demon prince. He's insanely powerful. But if you don't get that, then you get a weaker version of him.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun, isn't it? And he's got a couple of other like ambient powers as well, which are just like re-rolls and stuff like that. Here we are, Orican the Diviner. So he's the Master Chronomancer. So he basically grants nearby units a 5+ invulnerable save, you know, so like he manipulates fate around himself.
Okay.
So that's kind of cool, you know, because the thing is, he is so cautious, particularly within the swell of battle, that he won't enact anything huge. He's not like Magnus, for example. Magnus has this same quality. He also has a degree of foresight. But again, Magnus doesn't really give a shit because everything he loves is already destroyed anyway.
That's true, yes.
Everything's already gone to shit for Magnus. All of his dreams, all of his ambitions, all of his hopes, everything is burned, basically. So he doesn't give two shits. He'll just like, oh, well, this skein of fate will lead to the utter annihilation of this entire species before it even evolves. Let's do that. Let's touch it. You know? That's where he parts company with Ahriman as well. Because Ahriman is much closer to Orican.
Okay.
In terms of his foresight, Ahriman's much more considered.
I can see where you're coming
from with that.
He's much more
considered. I can imagine Ahriman having a thing about Orican. I could imagine Ahriman like saying, "Oh God, this guy can manipulate potentials and realities." I wonder if he could undo the rubric. You know, could he go back and alter it slightly so that it works in the way I intended? So that's kind of fun. There are potential tensions set up here that I really, really love. You've also got the big one, of course, the big guy, who is the equivalent of Robert Guilliman and of Abaddon, Imhotep, the Storm Lord. And Imhotep is really fascinating. He's the most intact of the Necron, the pharaohs, essentially, the overlords of the Necrons. He's emerged from his sleep with all of his capacities intact, unlike the rest. He remembers everything. He remembers the war in heaven against the old ones. He remembers the civil wars of the Necrontire that almost destroyed the race. He remembers the rise of the Eldari. He remembers the coming of the Catan. He remembers the biotransference that turned them into the Necrons. And he's awoken as he was.
Yeah.
He's exactly as he was. He's just in this upgraded body. And he sees what's happened to the universe and to the Necrons themselves. And he's in a kind of state of despair. He sees these scattered, mad, crazy creatures that were once his kin. And he wants them to be as they were. He wants the Empire back. He wants them to rise again. And he thinks they can. He's got it in his head that the Necrons are inevitable now, that the Necron Empire will rise from the ashes of humanity and the waning light of the Eldari, and they will sweep chaos away, and they'll end the Tyranids, and they'll recreate a new universe, a new empire. That's what Imhotep believes.
Okay.
And he's very cool. I like Imhotep a lot. Again, though, way more reasonable than all the others. He's more reasonable than Guilliman is. He's more reasonable than Abaddon, certainly.
It's the difference between the reason general and the fanatic, isn't it?
Really, yeah.
And it's never hit me until this point just how much the Imperium. I always knew they were fanatical, but when you kind of put them against somebody else, like these guys, the Necron guys, there is the extremist in them all. They all have the fanatical mindset. That means that they are not at home to reason.
Exactly.
Mr. Logic is not at home to play.
I think that Imhotep could potentially see Guilliman and think, he's obviously a fantastic general and a worthy successor to his father's throne. I wonder if I could talk to him.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could align at some point, but Guilliman wouldn't. He just wouldn't.
No.
I mean, he has issues obviously with the Inari who helped in his rebirth. He's quite about all of that. You know, he hates that. He just wouldn't. Yeah. He would see it as a sin. Whereas Imhotep, I imagine, would be like, "Oh, come on, man. There's no reason for this. We both have these enormous empires. There's no point in us fighting. We could create something fantastic here."
Yeah.
I've just found a fantastic quote from Orikan the Diviner, which kind of sets out his character. Time is a weapon like any other. If nothing else, I can simply wait for my foes to rot.
That's nice.
It's great, isn't it? Because, he is immortal.
Yes, yeah.
So it's like, why should I even get involved?
Yeah.
I could just wait for them to die. It's great. I mean, one of my favourite characters in the entire thing, not least of which because his model is fantastic. He's like a spider. He's got like the tomb spider bottom half and a Necron torso, is Illuminor Zeras. And Illuminor Zeras is really interesting to me because he's called the architect of biotransference. Because he's the one, although the Catan provided the knowledge, the raw knowledge for biotransference, Illuminor Zeras is the one that made it happen. He's the one who created the vast engines into which the Necron Tire were herded by their overlords, and which changed them into the Necrons. So he's the father of the Necron race. And you can actually have him. Yeah, you can actually have him as a model, and he's fucking cool. He's brilliant. He's like a cross between a tomb spider and a Necron overlord. He's absolutely fantastic.
Well, I need to see that, and I need to see that
He's
now.
lovely. He's absolutely lovely. And he's again a very reasonable character. He's a very reasonable character. What he's trying to do is perfect the Necrons. He wants to undo all of the flaws that have been done to them. And so, like Trazyn, he takes specimens, but he's more of the Fabius Bile type.
Yeah.
He takes specimens to dissect and to... he wants to see what makes them tick. He wants to see if there's anything he can take from them that he can then incorporate into new Necron forms. He's a fantastic character. His model's just beautiful. He's holding like a human skull and he's dissecting it with like a laser scalpel coming out of his finger. He's an absolute stunner. I mean, the whole codex, actually, the quality of it just oozes. It's so much fun to read. The stories of the Necrons are just superb, particularly like the really deep ancient time stuff.
Yeah.
Like the war in heaven between the Necrons and the old ones. I mean, this really does set out why the Necrons are a threat in this universe. They were at war with the old ones once upon a time, and they held their own. No, they didn't just hold their own. They defeated them.
They kicked the living hell out of them, if memory serves
They
me right.
drove them away.
Yeah.
Well, initially they were failing. Initially, the old ones were driving them back, but then they found the Catan. Then they found the Catan, and the Catan back then were very different from what they are now.
Well, I was actually going to ask you, what is the basis for the Catan now?
The Catan now are... Because there was that thing a few codices back where they changed the dynamic of the Necrons.
Yes,
So originally, the Necrons were enslaved to the Catan.
Yes.
So the Necrons themselves had no personality. The Catan guided them. That's not the case anymore, because what we have now are not full-bodied Catan. They're actually Catan shards.
Yeah.
They're bits and pieces of the original Star Gods. The Star Gods were the ones who came up with the notion of biotransference, which transformed the Necron Tire into the Necrons, right? And it was an effort to enslave them, but it didn't work. It didn't work. The Necrons actually turned against the Catan, and they managed, with their technology at that point was so immensely advanced and powerful that they shattered the gods.
Wow.
They actually broke the gods apart into shards, and then they went around and took the shards, and they actually captured them in these bodies of liquid metal called necrodermises, and then they captured them within these vast vaults called tesseract vaults. And the tesseract vaults, you can actually get models of them. They're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic.
I've seen them.
The tesseract vaults, they're like big pyramids or obelisks, and the energy of the Catan, even the Catan shards, is such that the tesseract vaults are endlessly being destroyed and eroded from the inside. So within them are swarms of scarabs and like nanomites that are endlessly rebuilding them. But the tesseract vaults keep the Catan shards in line. It's absolutely brilliant. So the Necrons have not only shattered the gods that they once were enslaved to, they've enslaved those gods.
I love that as a concept. It's
Me too.
It's pushed the Necrons from something that feels a little bit, not really feeling them, into something I really want to get into the lore of.
Yeah, I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this codex. If I had the money and if I had the time, it's time more than anything, I would so get a Necron dynasty. I would make up one of my own and give them all sorts of shit. I'd have them, I'd convert them so that they were crawling out of the ground like zombies. They were like hoisting themselves up out of the ground and they'd have dirt and bits of worms and filth coming off them. Because they're kind of like that. They are this sort of undead army in 40k.
Yeah.
But there's so much more than that. There's so much more than that. You could read this codex for days and not even scratch the surface of the lore that's going on here. They're a wonderful army. They're a really cool addition to the 40k universe. And I think they've been developing and evolving for quite a time because they are one of the newer armies in the 40k universe. Yeah. But I think this time they've really got them down. They've hit them so hard. Yeah. This time, and they've given them character. I would love to make a little army of Trazyn the Infinite's followers, that are all dolled up and are a bit like parade-like. I would love to make an army of Orican the Diviner's followers who are all like mad and maybe like flickering between different states because they're operating on different timelines. It's the potential for collectors here and for modelers, and it's immense. It's absolutely immense. Well done, Games Workshop, by the way.
You've turned the Necrons into something that it's much like the elves that we were talking about last episode. Yep. They've taken the Necrons from something which is they exist to God, I really want them. This isn't fair. There's too much. There's too much, Games Workshop.
There's way too much. I mean, actually, the Necrons were basically released simultaneously, and this is why I can't do them. This is why I can't do an army of the Necrons, because they were released simultaneously with the Drukhari, or the Dark Elder. Yeah. Now, as I'm sure you know, Adam, the index army list for the Drukhari came in for a bit of stick.
It did, yes.
Because it wasn't very good.
No. It could have been better, yes.
They were awful. And, the Dark Elder have been awful in tabletop terms for quite a while. They just... The way they function, their dynamic is very difficult to realise and make effective. Mm-hmm. They've always been slightly more Eldar or Eldari than the Craftworld Eldari. This whole thing of the glass cannon.
Yes.
This whole notion of fragile but fast and hits like a fucking dump truck. Yeah. The Craftworld Eldar do have that element, but they've always had heavier units. They've had stuff like, say, the Warp Spiders, like the Dark Reapers, the Fire Dragon, the Aspect Warriors in general, really, that are slightly heavier. They've got a bit more oomph to them. They're a bit more survivable than the Dark Elder or the Drukhari as they are now. The Drukhari have always had this thing where they cannot stand up to punishment. They're just so fragile. There isn't really a defensible unit in the entire army, in the entire race. I think their maximum save that you can get is a 3+, barring some very notable exceptions. So there is a tendency for them to melt. They hit the enemy lines, and if they don't obliterate them, if they don't scatter them in the first turn, they just melt because they can't take the counter assault. They just can't take it, and it's very difficult to realise. And make them functional in game terms. I've got to really hand it to Games Workshop. I'm sure you know, Adam. I'm sure you've been reading the excitement about this codex.
I really have, and every single thing I've seen, I haven't seen any negativity towards it at all.
There isn't any.
There's just this wave of positivity about the release.
There's not a thing. I mean, all of the codices have been good.
Yeah.
All of them have been good. Some of them have been standout fucking spectacular. The Death Guard, the Thousand Suns, the Astra Militarium, the Necron Codex. This potentially supersedes all of them. Not in terms of like, oh, it's more powerful than they are. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's not that. It's just the way it's put together.
Yeah.
It's so dynamically clever and very experimental. It's very experimental. They do things in this codex they haven't really done with others before, because the Dark Elder need it. They do need it. One of the most interesting things they've done is they've tried to move them away from from a particular detachment. You know, the big one, I think it's the battalion detachment, yeah? The one that gives you the 9 command points, which basically every army goes for, really. The Dark Elder don't function like that.
Okay.
They've got a special rule that is designed to represent the fact that they are not a united force. No singular organisation within Comora, the Dark City of the Dark Elder, is vast enough or powerful enough to take on the equivalent of, for example, a Space Marine chapter.
Oh, right.
None of them are. Like, the biggest one is the Cabal of the Blackheart, which is Asdrabale Vect's lot. They're not even a quarter as powerful as, say, the smallest Space Marine chapter. They're nowhere near. So they need to create plots and schemes and partnerships with other organizations within the Dark City. So when they raid into the material universe, you don't just have a cabal. You have cabals and witch cults and homunculi covens. You have other cabals backing them up. So what you've got is this special rule, and it's really clever. It's really, really clever. What it does is it means that rather than getting benefits for taking a battalion detachment, they get benefits for taking smaller detachments. If they take, I think it's 4 or more patrol detachments, then they get +8 command points. It's called Raiding Force.
Yeah.
It's really clever. It's really clever, because that means what you are going to have are these little piecemeal armies that have got bits of cabals that have got their own special rules, bits of covens that have got their special rules, and then bits of witch cults that have got their special rules. It's really, really clever. And it actually encourages you to produce armies like this. So Dark Elder are going to be organised entirely differently from every other army out there, generally speaking, and in a much more characterful way, because they just don't do that. They don't launch these big, like, crusades or like world-conquering armies. They just don't do it. They don't have the resources, and they don't want to. And this is another thing about the Dark Elder or the Drukhari. They don't want to conquer territory. They're not interested. They don't want to take your factories or your. They wouldn't spit on your equipment or your weaponry. They're not interested. Their weaponry is so far in advance of anything you could ever produce, unless you're probably the Necrons or the Asiani. They don't care. What they want is you.
Yeah.
They want resources, because the Drukhari, they function, their entire civilization and their cultures are based on sadism and pain. They can't survive unless they have other creatures to torture and to torment, and the Emperor's children and the followers of Slaanesh are bad enough. They do the same pretty much, but compared to the Drukhari, they're children. They're children drawing stick figures compared to the tapestries, the Sistine Chapel ceilings of agony that the Drukhari paint.
That's a mental image that I'm not going to get rid of in a hurry. Thank you, George.
Honestly, it is the worst thing in the universe, in imagination, to be taken by them. Because you're not going to die. It's not going to be that simple, unfortunately. Even if you give out under the pain, they'll just remake you. Or they'll have a clone somewhere that they siphon your consciousness into, and they'll start again, and they'll do it differently. You are never escaping.
Wow.
You are condemned if the Drukhari take you to abomination, to atrocity, to agony. You are never getting away from them, especially if you're taken by one of the homunculi covens. You are done. The only hope, there isn't any. I can't even imagine of a way that you could get out of it. I just can't imagine.
It's not like you can survive for so long that eventually they'll give you respect and move
No.
beyond, because this is you for eternity. This is
Absolutely.
there is
They
no
don't-
coming back from this, and you don't
There is
even get
no-
oblivion at the end of it.
Nope, there's no hope of that. And you know what the worst of it is? They're immortal too.
Yeah.
They're immortal, and Commora's not going anywhere. Some of the splinter realms of the Dark City, because this is a funny thing about Commora, it's evolved so massively since its original inception.
Yes, it has.
Way back when, Commora was just a city. It was just a port city in the webway, and that was it. It's not that anymore. Commora, it points out that Commora is one of the most populous places in all of the 40k universe. It's huge, because it's not just one reality, it's multiple pocket planes that are all linked together. You can walk from one universe to another in the blink of an eye in Commora because of the technology that links it all together. It's a bit like Sigil
Yeah, okay.
from
yeah.
the D&D universe, you know? You can span light years with a step in Commora, because it's all of these satellite realms and dimensions, some of which are synthetic, some of which have been created by the Dark Elder themselves, by the Homunculi, to do unspeakable things in. So it's potentially infinite. The city is potentially infinite. Nobody knows where all of its spars lead. Nobody has catalogued all of the satellite dimensions and dungeon realms that are linked to it. And also, it doesn't obey the laws of physics or reality. So you can walk down a street in Commora that begins to curve up on itself. And you'll see buildings that are jutting at odd angles or down from above. You'll see people walking in the sky above you.
You've created an idea here in the way that you've described this. And it's one I'd like to explore, actually. And it's the idea that Commora is the way to look outside of the galaxy. Right?
Yeah.
You could use Commora to leave the galaxy as it is now and look to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, it's funny you should bring that up, because that's exactly what some of the forces within Commora are doing.
Right.
The Homunculi. The Homunculi, for those who don't know, are probably one of my favourite things in all of 40k. They're Cenobites in space. They are the most ancient of the Eldar, of the Eldari still existing. They're the ones who gave birth to Slaanesh. They are the heads of the pleasure cults that existed within Eldari society before the birth of Slaanesh, and which drove it into complete and utter denigration. This is, I mean, you can't emphasize this enough. They were so perverse they gave birth to a god of perversity.
Yeah, I mean,
my
as
God,
CVs go, that's a pretty good one to have.
it's pretty damn good. And you know what? They don't really care about it anymore. They're not like the Ajayani who are repentant about it. They don't care, because they aren't beholden to Slaanesh at all, unlike the other Dark Eldar whose souls are being slowly leached away, which is why they have to cause pain to other creatures in their place. It sort of fills the vacuum. It sort of regenerates them. The Homunculi don't suffer from that anymore. They found a way of inuring themselves to that, and they operate within these dungeon dimensions that they've handcrafted, that are largely separate from Commora. They can be reached from Commora if they want it to, but they can just seal them off. They can just seal them off and operate within their own little blasphemous, hideous Edens for as long as they want. But what certain cults within the Homunculi are doing right now is creating these pocket dimensions that are away from Commora. They're away from the material universe. They're away from the webway. They're preparing for the collapse of reality. And they're stocking their larders.
Yeah.
It's what all of the raids are for at the moment. And you know what? Asdrabale Vect is in on it. That's something that's very interesting in the new codex. Urian Rakarth, who is sort of like he's not the head of the Homunculi, but he's the one that's most respected. He's the one that all the others look up to and try to emulate. Him and Asdrabale Vect that they're aware of what's going on in the wider universe, and that it's on the edge of ripping apart. So they have cobbled together this scheme of creating Neo-Comera.
Okay.
Which is not just going to be another dark city, it's going to be a dark universe. It's another reality.
Wow.
Yeah. That the Dark Elder populate with their favoured victims, largely Tyranids. They really like the Tyranids.
Yes.
And then they retreat to it. They leave the universe to collapse in on itself, and they become the dark gods of their own hideous, hideous universe.
That's one of the coolest goddamn things I've ever heard.
You know what the worst of it is? They could do it.
Yeah, everything's in place.
They're actually at the point where they could do it, particularly the Homunculi, because the Homunculi are as far apart from the other Drukhari as the Drukhari consider themselves to be from all the other species in the universe. Mm-hmm. They're basically gods. They can do what they like. There is no consequence for the Homunculi whatsoever. They consider everything a playground. They consider it all fun. It's all good fun to them. And I love that about them. I love it about them. It's no wonder that a lot of the other Drukhari sell themselves to the Homunculi in the hopes of becoming like them.
Yeah, in order to become like the Masters. Yeah, that's the...
Although, often it's not that. It's not power that they're looking for. It's because they're bored.
Right.
It's because they're bored. The thing about Comera and about the Drukhari is that they've moved so far beyond just being the Dark Elder, like pointy evil Elder. They are sadomasochistic psychic vampires, right? Mm-hmm. Not only do they feed on other species' pain and suffering and anguish, they like pain themselves. They actually really enjoy any experience as long as it's extreme, as long as it's intense. So they work on themselves as much as they do on anyone else. It's actually quite fashionable in the Dark City to sport a particular surgical deformity that the Homunculi have inflicted on you, but that you can sustain, you know? Mm-hmm. It's so it's no wonder that they get so bored that they sell themselves to the Homunculi, who will suspend them in a state of absolute extremity forever and ever.
The more you talked about... I know I just said this about the Necrons. The more you talked about it, the more that the Dark Eldar, or the Drukhari, are interesting me.
Oh, God, man. I'm making a Homunculi coven as we speak. As we speak. The Tattered Veil. The Tattered Veil. Cool. I love them. Yeah. The Drukhari are kind of everything I want from the Eldar. Mm-hmm. And then some. And the fact that they have such a spectacular codex now is right up there. They still play how they used to. They are still a glass cannon. They're not like overbearing or superpowered or anything like that. But they play so beautifully.
It sounds to me that they've removed themselves so far from what they were, the space pirates and raiders. Yeah. But they haven't got rid of the space pirates and raiders part. They've merely evolved it out to where it logically should go.
That's exactly it. They are a thinking person's army.
Yeah.
You really need to know how each of your units works in tandem and how each of their little special rules can be utilised to the very best. Mm-hmm. And you need to do it early. They are a raiding force. They're a strike force, so they need to be aggressive. You can't play defensively with them. Okay. They're like the mirror opposite of the Death Guard.
Yeah.
They're the mirror opposite. With the Death Guard, you stand back, you let the enemy come to you, and you get yourself into defensive positions and let them break against you. The Drukhari, you do not do that. They cannot sustain a siege. They cannot sustain playing defensively. You need to maneuver them into position early on and have them strike in tandem. And what you want to do is just destabilize your enemy lines.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to do. It's very easy to do because they hit like a dump truck. They've got some of the nastiest weapons in the game. Mm-hmm. Like long-range terms, they're foul. They're absolutely foul. The amount of raiders they can take, all of which are armed with things like dark lances and whatnot, is absolutely insane. Because the raiders are open-topped, they can fire from them even when they're mounted in them at full capacity, and then some. So you load up a raider with Cabalites Dark Elder Warriors. And Dark Elder Warrior units are kick-ass now. They're really fragile, but they can each take, I think, 4 special weapons now. So suddenly you've got these hideous equivalents of plasma guns and stuff like that, all firing at once and manoeuvring around while they're doing it. It's like a drive-by thing they've got going on. They can absolutely massacre entire units if they're played correctly.
You don't need to do this to me, George. This isn't fair.
No.
This just isn't fair.
I know.
You can't get me excited about space elves.
Yeah, I know, it's great, isn't it? And what's really what they've really got for here is that they really want you to understand that there are different power structures in the Dark City, and you can play with them. There are the Cabals. There are multiple Cabals that all have different warlord traits. They all have different... They're called obsessions in this one.
Oh, I like that. That's good and thematic.
They all have Cabal obsessions. And that's another thing. The Cabals have always been a little bit underdeveloped. They've always been like a colour scheme, right? Just like the Necron dynasties. The major Cabals have really been fleshed out in this. They now have at least as much fluff as like the Chaos Space Marine Legions or the Space Marine chapters, and they all have their own warlord traits and they have their own special items and all of that shit. You have the witch cults, and again, you've got multiple different witch cults, all of which have their own obsessions and their own warlord traits and their own special items. You have multiple homunculi covens, all of which have their own warlord traits and their own special items and their own obsessions, and you can cobble them together. You can put them together, like you could take those multiple detachments we were talking about earlier, the patrol detachments, which are all quite small. Take multiple ones, take a Cabal and use the Cabal obsessions and traits of that Cabal. Take one that's a witch cult and use their obsessions and traits and war gear. Take another one that's a homunculi coven. So you've got this really varied and interesting army. Then you mix and match in what's coming later, the Harlequins.
Yes.
And then the inevitable Inari Codex. The amount of armies you can make from the Drukhari is going to be lunatic.
Well, not only that, when the Inari stuff starts to hit, that I think is going to be really interesting, because the Inari is going to be built out of everything that actually, what is the overall term for the Eldar?
The overall term is the Alderi.
It is just the Alderi.
Alderi, yeah. The Craft Worlders are the Azuriani. After Azurmen, obviously. And the Drukhari are the Dark Elder. And then you've got the Inari after Inead.
I got the Craft World and the Eldar names mixed up in my head.
I do it all the time. Like, I'll call the collective for all of them is the Alderi.
The Alderi, yeah.
But I'll call them all the Azuriani.
Yes.
You know?
I had it the other way around. I was calling the Craft World Eldar the Aldari.
Yes.
And that's where I was getting a bit... this is a lot of words that don't actually exist.
Yeah. But you know what? I quite like them. I have to say, as it comes to like rebranding, they've done a damn good job with them. The Drukhari it kind of rolls off the tongue. Yes. It's kind of fun. The Azuriani is a very nice term. I really like that. And it makes sense. It's after Azurian, the father of the Eldar, so, you know.
I don't know what it is about the Azuriani, but it always reminds me of the Mimbar from Babylon 5.
Oh,
the two words do not fit together in any way, shape or form, but there's something about the feel of the word, the flow of it, that makes me think of the Mimbari. Weird one, but there you go.
But honestly, guys, if you even if you don't like these armies, but get the codices, get them and just read them, because they're fantastic reads. One of the funnest things, Urian Rakarth, the arch father of the homunculi and one of the oldest living beings in existence.
Yes,
barring maybe Traz in the Infinite. He really likes the Primaris Marines.
Okay, for any particular reason?
Well, it's because they're products of Fleshcraft, and he's quite into that. And he's actually really impressed with Robert Gilliman for coming up with them. They're in his entry in the book. There is this little thing where he talks about, I would extend him an invitation to the Dark City. I'm sure there's lots we can teach one another.
Can you imagine tea and crumpets,
Well, I can imagine the one between the Necrons and Robert would go better. than that one.
I think you're probably not a million miles away from the truth there. The conversation alone would have just been, so, would you like to tell me about how you got these, what did you call them? Primaris Marines together. Die, heretic.
Yeah. Well, this is the fun thing as well. I imagine in that dynamic, Urian would probably be the more hospitable.
Well, true, yeah.
I can imagine him being quite pleased to show Roboot around, his oubliette. It's like, well, I have some of your sons, actually. I have some of your sons from ages ago. Would you like to see what they look like now? Exactly. So much fun.
All I'm seeing here is Prince Charles, not Prince Charles, Prince Philip, when he was walking around about 10 years ago. How do you keep locals sober enough to learn to drive? That kind of stuff.
Exactly that. I mean, it's so much fun. I love it, and I love the fact that it goes into like how the Dark City works, what the politics is. They're bizarrely, despite existing in one of the most extreme states imaginable, they're also bizarrely one of the most domestic races because they have a home life. It's not like say the Space Marines who don't have a home life, or even like the Necrons who don't have a home life. They just deactivate and go to sleep.
Yeah.
The Dark Elder have a life outside of what they do as Kabbalites. They do stuff in the Dark City, you know?
Okay.
It's always unpleasant.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. And if you ever... Any human being that was dropped into the Dark City would probably die within seconds, Even the Drukhari, the weakest of them, the most trusting, end up dead very quickly. It's like ultimate Darwinianism, If you're not completely suspicious of everything and expecting traps to erupt from every corner, then you're going to die. It's kill or be killed in the Dark City. But they do stuff. They do like that, there are artisans and there are people who put on performances and stuff like that. And they have this weird theatricality about them, the Drukhari. There are like instances where there are massive parades throughout the Dark City where the homunculi sport their wares, the things that they've created, the atrocities that they've cobbled together. The witch cults do exactly the same thing. They parade their capacity for pain and for inflicting mutilation on their enemies. It's really, really weird.
There's a lot going on with the Drukhari that... If I take you right the way back, I think this is the easiest way to explain it. We go right the way back to...
Third Ed.
Was it third?
I think you want to go back to third. If you're looking at the origins of them, it was third Ed.
When they arrived, they were sex pirates.
They were a bit crap.
Yeah,
really.
They were sex pirates with big bladey knockoff Star Wars vehicles. Because there's no way you can say that the big, I can't remember what it was called now, but that the bigger ship that they had.
The Raider.
Yeah, that thing was just taken from Star Wars and a load of blades added to the top of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was Jabba the Hutt's skiff.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
There's no two ways around it. And what always turned me off is twofold, is that they themselves didn't do a huge amount, actually threefold if you think about it, they themselves didn't do a huge amount that grabbed me. They were just more Eldar, only they were emo Eldar.
They were emo Eldar, that's exactly what they were.
Yeah, predating the entire emo movement, of course, by about 9 years or whatever.
Yep.
But anyhow, and they didn't really grab me. They were super goth, and it just, not for me.
They weren't developed enough back then.
And also the type of person that played them were the type of gamer that usually, too young Adam needed to be taken out back and shot. I am a lot more calm with myself nowadays, so no longer do I feel that I should take other players out back and shoot them. I'll do it over the table now. I'll just shoot you in the face over the table. No issues there. As it's gone along, and as I've been picking up these codexes and stuff in the times where I've missed out, what I've discovered is the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari, they've had an evolution that it's not.
They had a renaissance.
It's not a sudden one either. You can see the glimmers and the beginnings of it, and then it solidifies, and now it gets to this, which is the concrete that it needed.
Yep. Absolutely. They had this renaissance in 5th Ed when Phil Kelly did the new codex for them, and he just took the core concepts that were in the original Third Ed book, which was just a pamphlet, like all of the Third Ed books were. And he went to town with them. A very good example, actually, is the Scourges. Now, I didn't like the Scourges when they first came out, because they were just Dark Elder in flying suits. That's all they were.
Yes.
So boring, really, a bit boring. They were just the Jump Pack Troop X, is what they were. The Scourges are now one of my favourite things in the entire book, because they're Dark Elder who have given themselves over to the homunculi and have subjected themselves to a very particular surgery where their bones are hollowed out to be like those of birds. Their hands and their feet are altered to be like clutching talons, and they have actual wings, like organic wings grafted to their backs, and they ascend from the oubliettes of the homunculi and soar up into the spars and spires of Comora, where they flock together and swoop down and pluck up victims and impale them. They are actually their own entities now. The fact that their flight is organic, I love. I love anything with wings, anything humanoid with wings kind of grasps me, and they look gorgeous. The models are fantastic. And I just love the ethos of them. I would have lots of Scourges in my army. And I'm going to have lots of Scourges in my army.
Anyone who knows me knows that I have a penchant for all sorts of folklore. I love myths and legends, and I love the monsters of myths and legends. And one of my favourite monsters, is the Tengu. I have this weird fascination with the Tengu and the evolution of the myth of the Tengu, and the only thing that comes close to it, I think, is probably Bigfoot. But that's a less serious look. I just quite like the idea of a giant hairy thing running around the forest. But the Tengu always gets me. And so when the Zangor started coming out, finally, Tengu in fantasy battle, yay! But of course they don't have the wings, which is a bit of a shame, but I've got ideas for that. The Scourges, I want a full army of them. Nothing but Tengu, so to speak.
That'd be really fascinating, actually, to see how that would work. Because now, of course, you can do it.
Oh, of course you can, yeah.
You can kind of do it now, so, that'd be fun.
I think it'd be a really interesting army to play, just one that's...
It would be very unbalanced, but loads of fun.
Well, what it end up being would be a swarm army. It'd be
a swarm army, but with lots of heavy weapons, because of course the Scourges they are so weird as a unit, because they're a jump pack unit, but they're not assault oriented.
Yeah.
They carry the heavy weapons, so they're the equivalents of Devastators and of Havocs, but they're very mobile. It's one of the ways in which the Drukhari just distinguish themselves totally. So what you're going to have is an army that can reposition itself and just put out the hurt. Like, really put out the hurt.
I think it'd be a really fun one to play, and I want to play it.
I think
and
so
I'll
too.
add it to my ever-growing goddamn list.
Yeah, but they are an excellent example. The Mandrakes. The Mandrakes are another example. Now, back when the Dark Elder first came out, they were just Dark Elder in suits.
Yes, they were.
They just had they didn't even look that distinct. They just looked like Dark Elder. They're not anymore. They're basically demons now. Nobody really knows what they are, but they emerge from the shadows, and they look a little like Dark Elder, like Drukhari, but they've got all of these like arcane tattoos and whorls all over their bodies, and they are made of shadow.
Yeah.
They're actually made of shadow, and nobody knows quite what they do, but they drag potential victims back into their shadow realm and do whatever to them.
One of the things I would love to do is grab hold of the mandrakes, and not to use them as mandrakes, but do a little bit of custom work and a little bit of paint work, and actually make them into another unit of acolytes for my Zangor, for my Zench Age of Sigmar army, because
they'd work
the
really
models
well.
are gorgeous.
They are stunning, the Mandrakes. They're so characterful. The way they've got those warped faces that are sometimes splitting into just maws.
Yeah.
That's all they've got. It's just a maw. Other times you can just see the eyes. And they've got that white hair that's spilling over their faces, the skirts of flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome. But they're a very good example of just how far evolved the concepts and units in the Drukhari have come. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm well in with my Drukhari right now. I really am. I love them. I absolutely love them. They're also one of the rare armies where there's a model for everything.
Yes, there is. It's a weird experience.
Yeah, it's really nice. And not only that, there's a good model for everything. The models are gorgeous. The basic Cabalite set is stunningly beautiful. Yeah. It's stunning. I mean, you can make so many individuals from it. So many individual units. The Incubi. Whoa. Those miniatures are... They're the closest the Drukhari come to a heavy unit.
Yeah.
Which means that they have like a 3+ armor save, which is like standard for everyone else. But they are so dynamic and so beautiful. It's you could just go mental. The potential for character with these guys is lunatic. For me, it's always going to be the Homunculi Covens. I mean, I've got to make a Homunculi that's based on Dr. Chenard from Hellraiser 2. I've got to do it.
Yeah. That's
carried around by his head by some hideous organic worm thing. It's got to be done.
I really want to see that now. Why aren't you making it now, George? Making it now.
I know, it's got to be done. It has to be done.
What I'd like to do with the Incubi, by the way, just because you mentioned them, is I'd love to take the heads and then put them onto the Thousand Suns.
Oh, interesting.
Imagine how that would look. Those great big Thousand Suns bodies and then these little slim heads. I think they were just...
very peculiar.
I like the idea. I like the imagery that has.
Very peculiar. I mean, that's another interesting thing in this book. You know, Ahriman is interested in the Dark City.
Is he?
Yeah. He thinks that he's trying to get in. He thinks that the potential for restoring his brothers lies within the Dark City. And there are quotes from him throughout. He actually knows a lot about it. He's obviously done his homework. Because he is a bit of a swat, is Ahriman. He's a bit of a tiresome nerd at times. And there are quotes from him throughout. He's like a scholar of the Dark City and of the Drukhari. Like, for example, he's interested in Dratzar. Dratzar, who is he's not the first Incubi, although he might be. It's hard to say. He's a total mystery, Dratzar. Nobody has ever seen him outside of his armour. He never speaks to anyone, and he never gestures to anyone. He just does what he does. He's like the ultimate Incubi, but he's got all the special rules of a Phoenix Lord, which suggests that he is a Phoenix Lord.
Okay.
Which suggests that he is Ahra, the father of the Incubi, although it's never explicitly stated that that's the case. But the reason he's interested in Dratzar is because one of the current myths about Dratzar, nobody knows if it's true or not, is in his armour he's just dust.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Which kind of, you understand why he'd be interested now. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Dratzar's one of those mysteries. By all accounts, when he first appeared, he just walked into the biggest Incubi temple, challenged the hierarch to combat, and just killed him. But refused to take a seat of power. Isn't interested in that. His name means the living blade. So he's just an instrument. That's all he wants to be. He just wants to kill. In the most efficient way possible, and he can because he's got the stats of a demon prince. So, he hits hard, does Dratzar.
So, basically, to sum up the Drukhari as they are now, good God, get out of the way. Hide for 2 turns, and then start shooting from as far as... Actually, no, I suppose it...
Play defensively.
Yeah, I suppose it would
Play defensively against them.
Yeah. Just siege yourself in.
Try and draw it out.
Yeah.
They can't sustain when you draw it out. They need to hit first. They need to hit hard, Don't let yourself be destabilised by them. Come up with a plan. Assume they're going to get into your backfield almost immediately.
Yeah.
Just assume that, because they will. And make plans for it. Just assume that's going to happen. That's the best way to do it.
Okay.
Because otherwise, they'll take you apart. Surgically, bit by bit. They're absolutely stunning. They play like how they feel in the background. Which is something that comes up again and again and again in these new codexes. It's what they're trying to do with them now.
Yes, very much so. The thematic game is the way that 40k is going, which is a far cry from the how many miniatures do you want to buy? £1,000 worth.
Yes. Or let's slump down the big expensive kit and then kill everyone.
Yeah, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, I'm so pleased. And also Xenos getting some love.
Yes, now where's my Gene Sealer cults? He says...
Oh, they're coming. They're coming. We've got some stuff about them in the up-and-coming chapter approved. So they're on their way.
Yeah.
We know they're on their way. I don't think they'll be until later on.
No, I think that. And to be honest with you, that's fine, because...
It's fine, because it means they're going to get some good stuff, you know. It means that their codex is going to be good.
I cannot in any way, shape or form bemoan the fact that my Gene Sealer cults aren't out yet, because everything else has been so damn good. There's been stuff come out that isn't for me, but that doesn't mean it's not fantastic.
No, it's all good. It's all good, man. I'm so impressed with the vast majority of releases. And also, we've got some weird stuff coming up. I mean, by all accounts, those Black Legion rumours we were talking about.
Yes.
They're coming up in the summer now.
They are.
That's like, what?
That's a few months away. Yeah. That's going to hit soon.
So, Abaddon, new Terminators, new Chaos Terminators, upgraded Black Legion Chaos Terminators, the Bringers of Despair. Wow. What's that all about?
Do you know what also makes me happy? The fact that they'll probably be doing a campaign to go with the new stuff, right? And if there's a new campaign, that means that Malign Portents might end.
Yeah, so you could stop.
And I'll be able to stop. I didn't expect it to go on this long.
No, you kind of let yourself in for it, didn't you?
I made a terrible error of judgment.
You did. You let yourself in for it.
There's something else actually coming up before we close down for the day. A little bit of a rumour site. Now, not often I try not to bring rumours up on the show, purely because rumour is rumour.
Yes.
But there is something that has been tickling at the very edges of the rumour mill, which has made me very interested. And that is the idea of the Prime Orc. Because that's an amazing pun. I don't care who says it isn't. It is. Primarch, Prime Orc. That's that. I love it.
Suits the orcs down to a T.
But the fact that we might have kind of seen the silhouette of it in
of Thraka.
Yeah.
It may have been Thraka. I mean, we know that he's coming back in a Prime Orc form. That's absolutely the case. Which means he's going to be immense.
Yeah.
He's going to be like Primarch scale, isn't he? He's going to be like Magnus.
Yeah. I think he might actually be a little bit smaller, but a lot broader.
But broader, yeah. But he's going to be like the equivalent, isn't he? He's going to be like the Primarch beater. You know, he's going to be like that orc that nearly strangled the Emperor on Ulanor.
Yes. And it's, ever since reading the Beast Arises, which, by the way, I do recommend if you've got the time.
Yes.
It's big. It's too... in all honesty, it's too big, but it is quite an interesting read, and the idea of the Prime Orcs is a really cool one. The stuff that they managed to do, the fact that like there's an orc that turns up and he's there to do the diplomacy side of things. He's the diplomatic orc.
Diplomats. Orc diplomats. I love that.
And he turns up on Terror to do this. You know,
No.
He comes to have a chat.
No.
And he acts brilliant. Oh, it's so good. But
brilliant.
But it got me thinking. So I went around Tumblr and I went around a few other places, and I built up a list on the group of why orcs are fantastic. And some of the people joined in as well, and that was quite cool.
Of course.
And in doing this, I discovered a few things which I didn't actually know. Right? My favourite one being that orcs communicated across massive battle stations and walkers
by shouting.
They were capable of being super loud.
So they don't have like intercom systems or vox systems. They just shout really loud.
An orc evolved really loud voices
to do it. Awesome, I love it.
And my personal favourite one, that the Emperor is only kept alive because the orcs
believe he was him to be. I want that to be true.
So do I. there's a couple.
I want that to be the ultimate like irony that if the Imperium succeeds in its xenophobia and wipes out all the orcs, then the Emperor dies.
Stuff like the
That makes me smile.
so like the way the orcs think about guns. The guns work because they believe them to be guns.
They believe them to work. Yeah, it's the same for their spacecraft and their gargants and everything. They shouldn't work. They're just like, they're peculiarly psychic, aren't they, as a collective species? And that's what makes all their stuff work. Everything else, doesn't work. In any rational terms, it doesn't work.
It's the best way to fight orcs is to paint yourself purple. Because if they see purple, they think you're really stealthy, so they can't see you. They see you, but they realise that you're covered in purple, so then the brain makes them think that they can't see you.
That's fantastic. The Dark Elder and the Emperor's Children should be all right.
A really great one I discovered was that there was an Imperium squad that ran out of ammo, so they were just making the noises of guns, and the orcs were still being killed.
Brilliant. I love it.
They are fantastic.
I love it. God. And, they're coming. The orcs are coming.
And
there's no doubt.
I do think that when the Orc Codex hits, that's going to be my first proper big 40k army.
Yeah.
Purely because I love the Orcs, and I can't imagine what they're going to do with them this time round.
Well, you know one thing they are going to do, and it's so easy to intuit. They're going to go back to second ed a little bit.
Yes.
Because you are going to get the Orc clans.
Of course you are, yeah.
And you're going to be able to play as them. They're going to have slightly different rules.
Yeah.
So Bad Moons and Evil Sons and all those guys, they're all going to be back. The Goths.
Yeah.
Oh,
the Blood Axe Commandos.
The Blood Axe Commandos, who all the other orcs hate because they're not orky enough. They try to emulate humanity.
Yeah, that's so good.
And the orcs don't like it. It's so cool. I love it. I love it.
The one that always got me when I was younger was the Bad Moons. I love the Bad Moons.
The Bad Moons.
Yeah,
they
grow.
The ones that've got the most teeth.
Yeah, they've got more teeth, and so they can get the best stuff.
The other orcs hate them, don't they? They consider them knobs, don't they?
Yeah. There's more knobs in the Bad Moons than there are in any other clan. I love them. I love them to bits.
I love it. The ones I always liked were the Death Skulls.
Yes.
I loved the way that they just used to loot the battlefield and just cobble stuff together.
The best thing about Death Skulls is that they've always got a pair of pliers on them. So if they find if they find a dead orc, they just take all of its teeth.
Just nick the teeth. Yeah.
The idea of using teeth as currency, it's so
I love
good.
it. I love it. And I sincerely, what I really hope we get back? I hope we get back the explosion in a paint factory orc armies.
Yeah, so do I.
I kind of want them back. They've done it in Age of Sigmar. So I don't see why they wouldn't do it for 40k.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we see the orcs go, sort of remove a little bit of the because the orcs are scary, right? Let's put that. They are terrifying. But I hope for a background point of view and from the sort of gameplay point of view that they add that little bit of fun back to them.
Me too. I mean, they tried to make them way too grimdark.
They are
with some of the more recent codices, they tried to fit them in too forcibly.
Yeah.
And the whole appeal of the orcs is they are different. They're a slightly lighter side of the 40k universe. Yeah. So, I want that back. I really do. Lots of humour, please.
Yeah, totally agreed. And it doesn't have to be outlandish and straight out there. You can do this stuff really well by just drawing little comparisons to them. So, for example, what's the orc battle hymn? Here we go. Here we go. It's just stuff
you can
like
do it subtly, can't
completely.
you? I mean, there's a little bit of it in the Death Guard Codex, but not much. There's a little bit there's a little snippet where there's some Astra Militarium in a tank in a Lehman Russ, and they're trundling towards the Death Guard, and then one of them says, "Sir, why is the hatch open? What's that smell?" And then they go, "Oh God, no!" And then a tide of Nurglings spills in.
Yep.
And it's kind of silly. It's kind of funny. That's the kind of thing.
Yeah. I want to see stuff like the shock attack gun make a proper reappearance. You know, the one where it gets inside Terminator armor and just starts biting down. You know,
brilliant.
It's fantastic stuff. I love Snotloons.
I mean, it ain't gonna.
I love Groths.
It ain't gonna happen. But I would love to see Makari come back.
Oh yeah.
I want what I really would kill to see is like the immense Primarch scale Thraka model, and then it comes with a little Makari, even if it's on his base.
Yeah.
You know, even if it doesn't do anything, if it's just on his base.
Or just riding around on his shoulder.
On his shoulders, yeah, that'd be great. I'd like clinging to a bit of him or something, you know?
He's dressed him up like a parrot.
He's on his shoulder. It'd be great.
Actually, that would be cool if you could just get little Makaris and they're in different costumes and you can pick which one you want.
That'd be so cool. I mean, I was thinking earlier today, I mean, that character's gone through some evolutions, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Tracker.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the original model, which is tiny and stumpy and really comedic. Really funny little guy.
With his big hat.
With his big hat, yeah. And then you've got like the more recent one, the 3rd edition one, which is huge and hulking and threatening.
ESB doesn't have any character to him.
Doesn't have any character, no. I'm not a fan.
No, I'm
not a fan of the big one.
So I'm hoping that when they do this new Thraka, he's going to be...
Yeah.
There is going to be all of the character of the first one. Because, as you said, the first one he's a stump.
Yep. And very silly.
Yeah. But the amount of character that comes through in that mould is beautiful.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I don't know how people painted him.
No.
Because he has so much detail crammed into such tiny, tiny, tiny little miniature. These big stompy feet coming out from underneath his coat, you know? I do have a bit of a soft spot for that version of Thraka.
Yeah, same. It's what I think of as Thraka, and I kind of wish that the super big armoured version kind of had at least some of those elements.
Some of it, yeah. Some of it. So actually, this summer we're getting both Abaddon and Thraka. Awesome.
That would make me so happy.
So 2 of the big bad warlords
yeah.
of the 40k universe are coming back. You know?
Imagine if the campaign is Orcs versus Chaos.
Wow, well, Black Legion are involved, so you know that's definitely in there. So
the Imperium are just trying to hang on as best they can.
God, I mean, so basically, like one of the most popular species in the entire universe, because there are more orcs than anything.
There are, yeah.
You know, they outnumber all the other races put together, even the Tyranids, you know. And the biggest Chaos Space Marine organization, which outstrips loads of even like the big chapters in terms of size. Yeah, that would be apocalyptic.
That would be so good. I want it.
Apocalyptic.
And I think with that, it's probably about time for us to start closing down because
I think so.
We're past the hour and a half
mark. We are.
Yes. Whoops. So a little bit of housework then before we finish. So the Fluffenhammer Patreon is now open and it is sorted and there are goals in place and there are rewards in place. And I'm now going to tell you about those goals and rewards.
Some of them are going to be good, ladies and gentlemen. I've been involved in some of them and they're going to be good.
So, for $1 a month, you get the satellite shows, which at the moment is Crawlhammer X Quest, which is a actual play, which uses Warhammer Quest: The Silver Tower mixed in a little bit with Dungeon Crawl, the RPG, to make a very, very silly Crystal Maze-based RPG.
Awesome.
And once you discover... There might be t-shirts at some point. Once you discover the joy that is, I'm going to attempt to... I'm going to say no more than that, but it is fantastic. It's myself, it's Chris, who's been on the show a couple of times. It's James and other Chris from the Creeks. And we got together and we played a 3-hour game, which has now been cut up into, I think it'll end up being 5 episodes for Season 1. We're already planning on Season 2.
Fabulous.
When that comes to an end, it'll be replaced, because we're going to do everything in seasons for the Patreon. The next one after that will be a series called Sanctioned, where myself and George, we're going to be looking at various forms of the AOS and 40k universes and worlds that don't really get talked about very much. Season 1 is all about inspirations.
And the first episode of that has already been recorded, ladies and gents, and it's a good...
It is. It's all about H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, you're getting bang for your buck with that one.
You really are. And once again, that'll be probably 5 or 6 episodes, depending on how many we think would work. I think it'd probably be 6, because I think there's a lot of inspiration out there that we can talk about.
There's a lot to bring in, isn't there?
And when that finishes up, we'll probably get another series of Crawlhammer X Quest, or it might be something else entirely. It depends. I don't want to talk too much about that one, because that's under wraps at the moment. At $3 a month, you get all of that, plus you get MP3s of all of the short stories that have been on the Fluffenhammer YouTube channel. The more eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that my YouTube channel, which was Gruff Nexus Audio, has now been turned completely into the Fluffenhammer YouTube. I've been shuffling stuff around about backstage, and I'll come more about that in a second. So you get MP3s of all of those. I've gone back in and I've tidied up the MP3s and made them a higher bit rate, so you're getting quite a lot for your money. $3 a month, it's less than a sandwich. It's not bad.
It's not bad, because I mean, you know, and there's a lot of stuff here for a Patreon reward. It's quite cool, I have to say.
And now the rewards. This is where it gets interesting. So we got the first reward, which was X Quest. Okay. The second reward, which is sanctioned, which is almost there, which is quite good. The third reward is going to be... I've completely forgotten. Well, fucking done, Adam. Oh yes, the third reward is going to be that we are going to look at using Hero Quest and Space Crusade, and using them as a basis to make an RPG. This isn't going to be one where I've stuck dungeon crawl into it to make the RPG. I'm going to go in from scratch and release RPG booklets as well, so you can at home also play the RPGs.
Brilliant fun.
Now, you may say, but you don't own the rights to Hero Quest. Correct, I do not, which is why we're going to be giving that away for free. It is just a bit of fun. But there's a lot of work that's been going into this, and we're going to, of course, do actual plays on that as well. In August, I'll be seeing George and some other people, and so we're going to try and sit down and do a Hero Quest RPG one of those nights.
Brilliant.
And then in October, hopefully there's going to be a few people at the Fluffenhammer meet in Nottingham at Warhammer World on October the 7th. And if people turn up, we'll try and get another game in there as well.
Excellent. I mean, if we can set it up, we may even be able to do like a filmed fight, a battle of some sort, you know?
There's loads of ideas I want to try and do for the meetup at Warhammer World. I'm talking with Warhammer World at the moment to see what it is that we can achieve. So that's pretty good. And then at $50, which I know is quite large, but if we can get $50 a month coming in, I've got a script. That is entirely based on the original Rogue Trader.
Oh, so it's going to be silly to the nth degree then.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be a full-blown audio play.
Brilliant.
Now, this is why it's at £50, because audio plays take a hell of a lot of time to put together. There's
kidding.
a lot of work that needs to go into them. I've done 2 in the past, and each of them have taken 100+ hours worth of work to get them done. So that's why that's at $50 a month. So I'm hoping that we can get to that, because it is something I really want to do. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And as we get into the sort of end of this year, I'm already planning on doing a short form version of that, just to get people's interest.
Brilliant.
So that's the Patreon. Also, if you do not fancy being a Patreon, but you still want to get hold of the X-Quest stuff, my other project, Riveted Sounds, which has currently gone through a resurgence, and I'm putting stuff back out now. Some of you who are interested in the more fantastical things will be interested to know that we're currently, over on Riveted Sounds, the Riveted Sounds podcast anyhow, serialising the complete Solomon Kane. And that's coming out every Monday, a new chapter every Monday. But I'm also going to be putting out the Crawlhammer X Quest complete show, all 2.5 hours of it, as a pay-to-download release through Riveted Sounds. So there's a lot of stuff. And if you fancy giving us a hand, because the money that we get from you is not going to be going into my pocket. It's not going to be going into George's pocket.
Nope, certainly isn't.
It's going to be going straight back into the Fluffenhammer in order for us to do other things. And by that I don't mean buying codexes. I mean,
no.
I mean community stuff. The idea is that we want to try and build up a slush fund, so to speak, that we can use in order to do more things with the Fluffenhammer brand. Go out, get people in who want to spend time. I'm looking at a project if all things work out, maybe minimum of 2 years away, that if I can get off the ground is going to be big.
Ooh.
But that takes money.
Yes.
And that's the problem. So that's why we're doing the Patreon. And I think that's all of the housework for the moment. Is there anything that you want to quickly throw out there, George?
There's a couple of things. We just on a personal note, my collaborator Nick Hardy, fabulous photographer, and we are going to be at London HorrorCon this June, and we're going to have a table there. It's going to have my fiction, my books. It's going to have Nick's photographs and posters and all sorts of stuff. So if you like your extremely distressing, disturbing, surreal horror, come along and say hello. And even if you don't, just come along, say hi.
Aye, go and see George and Nick. They are lovely people and will not
You'll
steal
definitely
your soul.
see us. Depends on how the weekend goes. And beyond that, we are going to have the next book out very soon, the next Born in Blood visual volume, and the short story collections are also due for publication very soon, and it's now 2 short story collections, not just 1.
Awesome.
Because I wrote so much. My publishers at Perpetual Motion Machine got back to me and said, it's really, really big. So could we split it into 2? Because otherwise it will cost a fortune. And I was like, yeah, that's fine.
Awesome, man.
So that will be out very, very soon. You can catch me over at www.strangeplaygrounds.com, and you can get lots of silly videos over at Exaggerated Elegy on YouTube.
And with that, I think we are out of here. So, George, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Pleasure, as always. Lovely to wax lyrical about the Drukhari and about the Necrons too.
And, of course, thank you at home for listening. And with all that then, this is Gruffy saying good night.
Bye-bye.
Where there's a witch, there's a way. Where there's a witch, there's a way. Where there's a witch, we don't want to go to war today. But the Lord of the Lashes has been a name. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a witch, there's a way. 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 Left, right, left, right, left. Where there's a witch, there's a way. Left, right. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. We are the slaves of the dark Lord. Left, right, left, right. Where there's a witch, there's a way. Where there's a witch,